Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Ramo, Rama Ramo, Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Ramo, Rama Ramo, Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Ramo, Rama Ramo, Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Ramo, Rama Ramo, Hare Hare Jayam Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Satvaya Raditaha Suklo Vitanvan Mamakam Jasaha Cetahre Hridaya Grantim Udaryo Brahma Bhavanaha Satvaya Raditaha Suklo Vitanvan Mamakam Jashaha Chetate Hridaya Grantim Udaryo Brahma Bhavanaha Satvaya Raditaha Suklo Vitanvan Mamakam Jasaha Chetate Hridaya Grantim Udaryo Brahma Bhavanaha Satvaya Raditaha Suklo Chetate Hridaya Grantim Udaryo Brahma Bhavanaha. One of the ladies? Satvaya Raditaha Suklo Vitanvan Mamakam Jasaha Chetate Hridaya Grantim Udaryo Brahma Bhavanaha. One more. It's a beautiful verse this morning. It's so easy to chant. Oh, you can't see it. Saha, he, tvaya, by you, araditaha, being worshipped, sukla, the personality of Godhead, vitanvan, spreading, mamakam, my, ya saha, sorry, fame, cheta, he will cut, te, your, hridaya, of the heart, grantim, not, udarya, your son, Brahma, knowledge of Brahman, bhavanaha, teaching. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The personality of Godhead being worshipped by you will spread my name and fame. He will vanquish the knot of your heart by becoming your son and teaching knowledge of Brahman. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes to disseminate spiritual knowledge for the benefit of all people, he generally descends as the son of a devotee, being pleased by the devotee's devotional service. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Father of everyone. No one, therefore, is his father, but by his inconceivable energy, he accepts some of the devotees as his parents and descendants. It is explained here that spiritual knowledge vanquishes the knot of the heart. Matter and spirit are knotted by false ego. This identification of oneself with matter, which is called Hridaya Granthi, exists for all conditioned souls, and it becomes more and more tightened when there is too much affection for sex life. The explanation was given by Lord Rishabh to his sons that this material world is an atmosphere of attraction between male and female. That attraction takes the shape of a knot in the heart. And by material affection, it becomes still more tight. For people who hanker after material possessions, society, friendship, and love, this knot of affection becomes very strong. It is only by Brahma Bhavanaha, that is the instruction by which spiritual knowledge is enhanced, that the knot in the heart is cut to pieces. No material weapon is needed to cut this knot, but it requires bona fide spiritual instruction. Kadama Muni instructed his wife, Devahuti, that the Lord would appear as her son and disseminate spiritual knowledge to cut the knot of material identification. What an amazing purport, huh? There's a few lines in here that really struck me too. Someone was talking I think it was Alan on Saturday, talking about how Prabhupada used English. And there was a phrase in here: matter and spirit are knotted by false ego. The identification of ourselves with matter, which is called Hridaya Granthi, exists for all conditioned souls. Chakshurun militam jena tajmai shri gurave namaha Panchakopatrubhyascha kripasindhu bhayevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. In Bhagavad Gita 14.4, Krishna says, Aham bija pradapita. I am the seed-giving father of all living entities. And as Prabhupada points out in the purport, the Supreme appears as the son of a particular devotee. When he appears as the son of a particular devotee, he is agreeing to appear. I found this nice quote. This is by Satyaraj Das, one of our sort of scholars. His birth, the Supreme Lord's, should be seen as an act of grace, a show performed for our benefit. His appearance in the material world is meant to cure us of our spiritual amnesia, reminding us of our real life in the kingdom of God and encouraging us to return there. So as Prabhupada says, the Supreme can agree to appear as the child because he is pleased by the devotee's service. Interesting when you're trying to preach to people about who is God, to try and convince them that the Supreme can appear as a child and that he can be scared of his mum. And at the same time that he's being scared by his mum, he is totally aware of every one of our desires within our hearts. He has those two potencies. And it's also mentioned by our acharyas, it's not that he's pretending to be scared. He's fully experiencing that rasa of being a child. But he's the father of everyone. It says, Prabhupada says, he's the father of everyone, but he can accept very special devotees to act as his parents and as his descendants. Because the parental love of Nanda and Jasoda is without parallel. It's described that Krishna eternally appears as their son. Those two are always his parents. Our birth is different. Our birth is not pastime. We are forced to appear, it's described, because we all have material desires, which we want to fulfill. So Krishna has given us these bodies to try and fulfill these desires. Have a go. As Srila Prabhupada says, we identify ourselves with matter. Matter and spirit are knotted by false ego. That really struck me, that phrase. We are spirit, but I am spirit, but I am so attached to matter because of my false ego. That knot of attachment is tied by the false ego. Even though when I look at matter, I see it change, especially look at this stuff, I see it changing moment by moment. Right in front of my eyes, but still I identify with it. The only way out of this misidentification, even though we all understand theoretically that I am spirit, it's sort of largely a theoretical understanding, isn't it? The only way out of this misunderstanding of who I really am is via spiritual knowledge. And Prabhupada, in today's purport, he uses the word Brahma Bhavana. They're in the verse. He translates those words as the instruction by which spiritual knowledge is enhanced. Brahma Bhavana. And I was thinking, that instruction by which spiritual knowledge is enhanced reminded me of just how much we owe the Bhagavatam. That just like we worship the deities, every morning we also worship the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's so important to our process. So I was thinking, you know, there's two verses that you often hear the devotees chant. Narayam namaskritya naram cheva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamodirayet. Before reciting this Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. So, it's said in the verse there, it is our very means of conquest. So what is it that we're trying to conquest over? Our material identification. We're trying to conquer that false identification. And then the next verse we usually chant, Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavate tamashloke bhakti bhavati naishtiki. By regularly hearing the Bhagavatam, rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is practically destroyed, and loving service unto the glorious Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. These verses are so poetic, isn't it? All that is troublesome to the heart is practically destroyed. So, by regularly hearing and rendering service. So what is this thing that is troublesome to us? The things that is troublesome are these emotions within that are still there within our heart, sort of base emotions like greed, desire for praise, fault-finding. All these sorts of lower emotions, they get in the way of a soft heart. Prabhupada has told us that our heart has to become as soft as a cotton ball. So these sorts of hard Kali Yuga emotions, they're in our way. So by regularly hearing and rendering service, we get rid of these anartas. They block our access to higher spiritual emotions. Loving service is established as an irrevocable fact. Everyone knows what irrevocable is? It means it's permanent. Yeah? Can't be revoked. What a blissful situation to be in, huh? When loving service in your heart is there as a irrevocable fact. So, by regularly hearing, we begin this practice of Shastra Chakshus, seeing through the eye of Scripture. Chakshu in Sanskrit means eye, and of course in the Shastra. So Shastra Chakshu. The ability to perceive and understand reality through the guidance and teachings found in the Scriptures. to see reality through that guidance of the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and other texts. These different, I heard someone call them the other day, these ancient scriptures of knowledge offer us a way to see things through the lens, like within the Bhagavatam. We see this instruction through the lens of really advanced devotees and through the instructions of the Supreme Lord himself. I read just recently an interesting statement that Shastra can be reassuring and it can also be challenging. Like some of the concepts that come up in the Bhagavatam are quite challenging to our idea of social norms and stuff like that. They can really challenge us. Like I remember that's instruction from Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita 5:22. He said, an intelligent person doesn't take part in the sources of misery. I was thinking that's good advice, right? Who wants to be involved in the sources of misery? But then, do you know what Krishna says are the sources of misery? He says, contact with the material senses. I mean, when you hear that, it's like, what? I was told my whole life that to enjoy the senses is what life's about. But Krishna says to try and enjoy the senses just in and of itself, separately from just trying to serve Krishna, just separately trying to enjoy the senses, are the sources of misery. Such pleasures, all pleasures to do with the body and the senses, have a beginning and an end. So a wise person doesn't delight in them. They're Krishna's words. And I was thinking of Srila Prabhupada's translation to the song Bhaja Hare Mana. He says it's like we're walking through a desert, the material world. It's like a desert. And someone offers you kindly, here's a drop of water. But it's like, who's going to be satisfied with a drop of water? The thing is, how do we get in touch, like it says in the verse we chant every morning, how to get in touch with that nectar for which we are always anxious? It's the nature of the soul we want to enjoy because the soul is such an ananda. It's ananda, it's meant for experiencing blissfulness. So how to realize that viewpoint of Shastra? We realize it by acting according to the instruction. So when we first act, we're just doing it out of obedience perhaps. But as we act according to the verdict of Shastra, it becomes our realization. We see how it plays out, the truth of it. It becomes our understanding by direct perception. It becomes our realization. We directly begin to experience this way of seeing that's given to us in the Shastra. When we first begin this process, our faith is not so strong. It's like a young plant, it's described. It can be hurt. We have to guard that beginning plant of devotional service. Even when we come along, we might have certain ideas of what's spiritual. Like I was talking to a guest here the other day, and she'd come here many years ago, and she's seeing all this development going on the farm. And she's sort of a little bewildered, like, well, is that spiritual? Like Prabhupada used to quote that example of some bogus yogi in India who used to make a big deal that if someone puts money near my hand recoils away from the money. But Prabhupada said, as much money as you can give me, I can use for Krishna. He didn't have that false renunciation. So sometimes our ideas of what's spiritual when we first come along get challenged. So this faith that brings us to Krishna consciousness, it's not a static thing. It grows and increases by our association with devotees and by practicing the process. our faith becomes stronger and stronger. I was thinking also, when we look at, say, some of the other big religions of the world, a lot of people's faith is sort of almost on the level of superstition, that you can be born into a certain religion. You know, that was your family's religion, whatever. But you don't really know exactly what it's about. It's just what you're born into. Sort of like a group belief. I think it's called Lokashraddha, that type of faith. Something you're born into, like what your community does. But the adherents of those types of faith, it doesn't give them any taste of their genuine spiritual self. They're not getting that spiritual experience. You just sort of go through the motions. Even, you see, when people come here, like on a big festival day, a lot of people come, you know, maybe it's wonderful that they come to a temple, but then what do they do when they get here? Like I was thinking yesterday, I was watching, there were some families of people taking selfies of themselves and the kids in front of the deities. They've got their back to the deities and they're taking a selfie. I mean, it's good that they're here, but are they really praying, you know, to Radha and Krishna at the feet of the deities, please help me? I mean, it's good that they're here, but we need a faith that's a bit deeper than that. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, I forgot to note where it comes from, but he says, Mani might help me here, according to one's existence under the various modes of nature, one evolves a particular kind of faith. According to the modes of nature that we're influenced by, we develop a certain type of faith, what we believe to be reality, the way of the world. It affects us like the food we eat, the way we talk, the way we treat other people. It's all based on this type of faith we've developed according to the modes of nature. The way I treat other people. In the purport to that verse in the Gita, Prabhupada says, according to his particular type of faith, one associates with a certain type of person. I can remember as a new devotee, I met the devotees first off down in Melbourne. And back then, Hare Krishna was pretty foreign to people. Now most people know about it, they're not threatened by it, you know, they see us as being colourful. I mean, you meet some pretty staunch atheists out there occasionally. They're threatened, their faith is threatened by what you do. So back then, the fact that we were there on the street chanting or giving out books, magazines like that, was such a threat to some people. I can remember being physically attacked by council officers. They'd come up and punch you one just because you're there. And it's because the person's faith is threatened. Yeah, he's thinking, what is this? What is this person doing here? You know, this is not supposed to be happening. They don't recognize you as a bona fide spiritual path or anything like that, not back then anyway. So we were often met with, they're just not doing their duty, just clearing the path or something. There's like gross hostility was built into them because you're threatening them. You're sort of shaking their faith a bit. But as we act according to Shastra, according to the conclusions of these divine texts, according to the instructions of our past acharyas, our faith deepens, it becomes stronger, to the point where I don't want to do something that's against the Shastra. You know, I know that in the Shastra it says this, whatever. So at a certain point you get to the point where I don't want to do anything that would offend the Shastra. That's called Shraddha. No, that's called Shastra Shraddha. Shraddha. So I was thinking of Prabhupada's example, that when he gives classes, we've all heard Prabhupada just quotes verses from the Shastra, from the scripture constantly, backing up what he's saying. He's not saying this is my opinion. He's saying, you know, in the Mundaka Upanishad it says da-da-da-da-da, in the Bhagavatam, and he'll list the verse and the text. We'll quote one of the great authorities. He's constantly referring to these texts. So that line from Prabhupada in today's purport, the identification of our self with matter, which exists for all conditioned souls, that I identify myself with material things. I think that's myself, that's my nature. So we are not born into an enlightened position. We are born into the mode of ignorance, isn't it? I'm born into the mode of ignorance. I mean, when you think of a new baby, what do you know? Your eyes don't even work in the beginning. You're sitting there in a nice warm nappy where you're filled with who knows what, and you're thinking, this is very enjoyable, it's so warm. We're certainly not born into knowledge. Gradually then, growing up means trying to develop knowledge. So Patanjali Muni, he's the Muni who gave all the instructions about Ashtanga Yoga for the asanas and that process down at Krishna village. He said we have to practice regularity. He said these are the things we have to have before you start to do any process of yoga. It includes ours. We have to practice regularity. We have to accept it's going to take time. This is not going to happen overnight. I mean, it can. Prabhupada says you can become Krishna conscious in an instant. But for most of us, especially for the likes of myself, it takes a long time. So we have to be patient. It's going to take some time. We have to approach it with the right attitude, and we have to be willing to follow the rules and regulations that are part of it. So that ignorance that I was talking about that we're born into, it comes from our background, where we're born, the country, the society that you're born into. There's all these expectations that you're supposed to follow. And I've noted down here, perhaps 1,000 or so previous births. We are conditioned by, like Krishna says, again and again we're born into these material forms according to our desires. And all the way along we're conditioned. And it creates a certain mentality. So because of this covering of ignorance, I don't really see the world the way it really is. I see the world as like a place, something that I want to exploit for my enjoyment. The example, I was thinking a year or so ago, the Australian government tried to bring in a law that the big mining companies should have to pay a little more tax. Apparently in Australia, the tax that the big mining companies is one of the lowest in the world. They can write off most of it. But when the government tried to bring this law in, the miners got together, these big companies, Gina Reinhardt and whoever else, and they created like a fund to fund their advertising, to go against this idea that they should be demanded to pay a little more tax. Their fund had more money in it than what the government had to spend. But you can sort of see their mentality. You know what I mean? I want to take as much as I can, and you think these resources, it's a once-time only deal, yeah? Once you've dug it up and sold it, that's it. But their mentality is, I want to take as much as I can and give back as little as I can. So that's the mentality that they've arrived with according to their conditioning and the modes of nature. Or another example was in Australia, I think when it's sort of listed as practically one of the biggest gambling countries in the world. So like in New South Wales, all these clubs that people like to go to have all these poker machines. So the government wanted to bring in some limits. Like apparently some person can rock up at a club and they can put an entire all their week's wages into a poker machine and arrive home, their wife's there with the kids, waiting to try and struggle through the week, and he spent it all on a poker machine. Because you can bet, apparently, practically unlimited on each throw of the dice, so to speak. Like in the UK, they've limited it so that I think it's a £1 maximum bet that a person can make, so it sort of limits how much you can lose, but not here. So when the government tried to limit what people... Is it $10 maximum? That racks up pretty quick though. When the government tried to limit that, so the clubs all got together, Clubs New South Wales and other, to fight back. They had another big fund to stop any limitations. And they were making this big deal. Oh, we support community projects, da-da-da-da-da. Except, they give $10 to a community project after they've made, $1,000 on the gambling. So again, what we see, what our eyes see, what our mind perceives is according to this conditioning, the way we see the world. And it's often faulty or illusioned. I was thinking of those, I was hoping Daksha might have been here. I got this thing on my phone the other day, and this little thing, it's like a picture, and it shows these sort of white lines, and they're all at funny different angles. And it says, in reality, these lines are actually parallel. It said, just tilt your phone forward a little bit, and all of a sudden, all these sort of lines which look like trees at different angles, suddenly you realise it's just because of the background, this little trick that's done visually, that they're not parallel. But you tilt the phone a little bit and you see, oh, they're all parallel. Or there was another one I had where you've got two pieces of colour, one there and one there, but there's a thing like a bar of something in between, black or something like that, and you would swear, well, that colour there's brighter or lighter than that colour. But you cover up that thing that's in between, you see they're perfectly the same colour. So basically then, the way we see things, our senses are not all that reliable. Isn't it? Our senses are subject to fault. It's one of the defects of the living entity. We have imperfect senses. It's part of our nature. And then it goes on, was because we have imperfect senses, we're subject to illusion. And I also have that propensity to cheat. And there's one more, I can't remember what the fourth one is. Imperfect senses. Make mistakes. Yeah. This is the nature of the living entity. So Krishna has warned us that identifying ourselves with these material senses will lead to misery. Because of my covered vision, I see the world in terms of like and dislike, raga and vesha. But my choice of what I like and what I dislike is based on my ahankara, the false ego, because I identify with the body. This false ego, it's basically your personal concept of how you're going to be happy, the way you see the world. If I act like this, then I'll be happy. But it's a false ego. It's sort of incorrect. According to the mind, according to my likes and dislikes, raga and vesha. So I can spend like a whole lifetime can go past trying to achieve what I consider to be something good materially. That thing could be a fancy house. It could be a prestigious qualification, some nice possessions, spend a lot of money trying to look good. I mean, people spend a lot of money, just trying to... So that's something materially that I consider good, raga, nice, attractive. And I avoid something that I see as bad. Neither of these good and bad, neither of them touch my spiritual nature. It's all on a material thing. Something that seems like it's good, but actually if it just brings you into more, like you would think, well, surely having a good qualification can't ever be a bad thing. But if all it does is sort of tie you into more and more bewilderment or illusion, that, I'm a fancy architect or whatever, then it's not doing you a whole lot of good ultimately. Spiritually. It doesn't touch my spiritual nature. Like we see examples of wealthy people, like really high achievers in the material world, and they're not happy. I'm sure Rupa would have met so many people out on the street, maybe they've got a Porsche or whatever, but intrinsically they're not happy people. I came across a quote from Stephen Jobs. Everyone know who he is? He's the guy that founded Apple, or the computers and fancy phones and what have you. At the end of his life, he said, there's a great difference to being just a human being and being human. There's a difference between just being a human being and actually being human. That at least he understood that this human birth brings responsibilities with it. What are we trying to achieve in this birth by the end? So this idea of good and bad, raga and vesha. When I come in contact with something that I don't like, for example, well, why don't I like it? What is my basis for that decision? It's because it's an obstacle to my enjoyment. That's all there is, isn't it? That's why something's bad, because it's in the way of my enjoyment. But again, my vision's just coming from my false ego. Just depending on the size of this obstacle, this thing I don't like, I either decide to fight or flight. There's those two reactions. I try to deal with it or get away. And then depending on my reaction, then the brain tells the body to produce hormones. Chemicals that stress the body, they get the body ready for action. So the way we react to things, the way we react to certain things that come, it can become habitual. You know, I can just always react in that same way, according to my conditioning. And it's described that habitual reaction, that becomes your mood. Like I was thinking, that mood could be, one of anger, one of greed, one of anxiety. And I think we've all come in contact with, say, a person who is just innately anxious. I mean, we're all a little bit like that, but some people are like, you know what I mean? It becomes really pathological. Or a habitual angry person. So the body becomes addicted to that sort of state that you constantly react in. Because it becomes used to having these chemicals floating around inside it. So it sort of adjusts for that. It doesn't want to change. Like, for example, I could say, well, I'm angry because of something that's happened. But that, again, it's like it's an excuse, isn't it? That I'm angry because of it, but I could act in a different way. It's just my conditioning that I become angry. That's my reaction to that thing. There's so many other ways I could react to it. Or on the other hand, if we become addicted to something we consider like a source of pleasure, materially, so the brain then tells the body to produce these chemicals, endorphins, that give that pleasure experience. That addiction, that pleasurable thing, it could actually be quite a negative thing. Like people become addicted to intoxication. They become addicted to violence. They become addicted to sex addiction. So many things that becomes their habitual way of acting. And then it becomes their mood. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 6, Krishna says, whatever state of being one remembers when he quits the body, that state he will attain without fail. So whatever this state we're maintaining, we're developing, when we take the next body, that state, Krishna says, you will attain without fail. In the purport to that verse, Srila Prabhupada said, the cumulative effect of the thoughts and actions of one's life's influences, one's thoughts at the moment of death, therefore the actions of this life determine one's future state of being. The actions of this life determine one's future state of being. So in today's purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions Lord Rishabhadev's instructions in the 5th canto, that this material world is an atmosphere of attraction between male and female. An atmosphere. The atmosphere is like that which you breathe. So we're living in an atmosphere of attraction between male and female. And I was thinking that attractive principle, that it applies to all living creatures. And since that description by Rishabhadev, Maharaj Rishabhadev, the world is an atmosphere of attraction between male and female, Kali Yuga has advanced quite considerably since that. The atmosphere we live in is saturated with male-female attraction, advertising, clothing, media. And Prabhupada then says, it's that attraction that takes the shape of a knot in the heart. I identify myself with matter because that attraction is generally built on externals, isn't it? Like it's built on how someone looks, how their voice sounds, their material personality at that moment. And Prabhupada says, by material affection, that knot in the heart becomes still more tight. But if my basis for a relationship, the way I decide things, is based on these externals, and I understand that materially everything's changing moment by moment. Our body's changing moment by moment. Like the cells on your eyes, I think every 24 hours there's a new skin of cells on your eyes. Every 2 weeks you've got a new skin. Even, I remember when I was younger, there used to be this theory that, well, your brain cells are not changing. Did you learn that at uni? Brain cells are constant? It used to be the given. But just recently they've discovered, yeah, they are changing. Apparently there's like new brain cells coming to a certain part of the brain constantly. So, because I saw another thing that popped up on my phone just recently. Oh, the latest theory, that consciousness is coming from something in the brain. The brain's changing constantly. And it's described also that just because they misidentify with these things, like the brain is a way of storing information, but it has no opinion about that information. You know, like your computer when you're typing away. Whatever you're typing, you have a feeling about that. The computer could care less, isn't it? It doesn't have an opinion on it. It's just storing information. So that's the brain. The thing that cares about our experiences is the mind. So this attraction to things that are ultimately material, like relationships and what have you, is expressed in subtle ways, in terms of our possessions, in terms of my position in society, in terms of the friends that I want to cultivate. These are just all subtle expressions of that attraction between male and female. I think it used to be called wealth, fame, and adoration. So Krishna talks of learning to control ourselves using a higher intelligence. In chapter 3, verse 42, he says, the working senses are superior to matter. The working senses are superior to this stuff. Mind is higher than the senses. And intelligence is even higher than the mind. And he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. And then in the next verse, 43, he says, thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, the mind and the intelligence, we should control the lower self by the higher self. And thus by spiritual strength, this is Krishna saying, we should conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. And we understand lust is just a general desire to enjoy the world separately from Krishna. That I want to try and be the supreme enjoyer. Again, going back to this Shastra Chakshus, one way of learning to control this lower self is then to follow the guidance given to us in these texts, these divine revelations. I was thinking that idea of a false self, that can be challenging to someone when they first hear about that. Like, you often hear people sort of talk about, you just have to learn to be spontaneous, just do what you feel like, get in touch with your real feelings. But what if that feeling is urging me to do something that's the wrong thing to do, in the sense of a higher self? I was listening to Keshava Maharaj recently, and he said sometimes the greatest thing that we can do in the face of this onslaught of desires, he said sometimes the greatest thing you can do is to do nothing. Just don't do anything. Just withstand that onslaught of desires. Just resist. He has a classic line that what does he say? Don't give up, don't give in to something that feels good now at the expense of losing touch with that thing that you know you really want, that higher thing. Yeah, sometimes the greatest thing we can do is just do nothing. Like some of these attachments, as I mentioned, they can be really unnatural, they can be degrading. Like when you think of learning how to smoke, I mean, it takes a bit of practice to learn how to... You know what I mean? The first one you have is like, oh, I feel sick. You know, because you're putting something in your body that's poisonous. But hey, I'm going to persist, you know, because they used to have these big billboards, remember, like, real men smoke Marlboro. They'd have a picture of a cowboy on a horse. And apparently they didn't like to tell people, but most of the Marlboro men died of cancer. A bit unfortunate. Getting drunk. You know, it's like, think of the money, the advertising that goes into just pushing alcohol. But it's like, it's a degraded activity, isn't it? And why do you need to do it? Because you can't handle where you're at. So this identification with matter is going to lead me to suffering, to myself and to the people around me. Like in Australia at the moment, we've all heard that Australia's going through an epidemic of domestic violence. I'm not sure whether it's the same at the moment, but last time I checked, somebody's partner, somebody's spouse was being killed. One woman every week. Did you know that? You heard that? One woman every week is being killed in Australia by her spouse. And why? Because the spouse, the guy, 99.5% of the time it's the guy wreaking the violence. They become overly attached. And their whole identity of who I think I am is just tied up in this relationship. And if it doesn't go according to my plan, then, you know, I just lose the plot. Like there's an instruction in the Gita where Krishna says, he lists in the items of knowledge, there's about 20 things that Krishna lists as what is knowledge. And one of the things he lists is absence of false ego, non-attachment to children, wife, home and the rest. And for the ladies that would be same thing, non-attachment to husband, wife, children, home and the rest. So it doesn't mean though that you don't love your partner or your kids, but it means that that's not your whole identity. You understand, it's a duty that I'm doing, it's a service that I'm doing to look after these other living entities. But if it doesn't go according to my plan, I don't lose the plot. So we've practically run out of time. We're just going to cut to the end here. As you can see, I've got enough notes here for another half an hour or so. It's... So, sadhana. Sadhana is our chance to change that default state of how I sort of see the world. You know, that sort of mood that materially I've sort of developed, the way I react to stuff. Prabhupada says, look, we can get off the mental platform and we can unlearn that conditioning bit by bit. We can make positive changes. And we should be sensitive to feel those changes as we're prosecuting our sadhana. Bhaktivinoda Thakur advises us, I should examine myself every day. What progress have I made? He says we should gradually feel our emotional reactions to things begin to change. Our mood, our state of being. That's gradually going to change the way I see the world as I prosecute my sadhana. We have to practice patience. Prabhupada commented, he said, we want something sublime, that's why we've come here. We want something sublime. I would like to be able to worship the Supreme Lord, but I want it cheaply. I'd like it quickly, if you don't mind. So we all begin devotional service with anarthas in our heart, unwanted things. But if we begin the process and all we got to do is stick with it, then the change in the heart will happen. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. I think I've run out of time. If anyone has a really quick comment they want to make, I'm happy to hear it. But otherwise, Krishna's being made available to us in a different form just over there. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.